So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. My name is Kurt Sasek, although you probably knew that because my name's like right above what you're watching. I am Mr. Damon Burton. He is the founder of SEO National, which is a seven-figure business that he built all himself. And he has done quite well for himself. He's a Forbes contributor. He's worked with NBA teams. And about 10, 12 years ago, Damon, I guess maybe this is what kind of put you on the map. You outranked a billion-dollar business on Google. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's kind of where one of the tipping points, I think we'll talk a lot about the entrepreneur journey in this. And that was one of those little blips on the radar was my wife would watch The Bachelor, ABC's Bachelor, she still does. And so this was in 2007. So about 15 years ago. And she would kind of reel me in on the season finales and say, hey, come watch this with me. So I'd go watch it with her. And from what I had remembered from previous season finales, it was, hey, season's over. Thanks for watching. Come back in a couple weeks and we'll tell you who the new guy is. But this time they said who the new guy was. And so the marketing mind and business mind started running, going, why are they breaking from the norm? Why are they talking about who this guy is this time versus historically not? So I went and looked up the gentleman and I couldn't really find any information about him. So then I started thinking, in my limited interest in this guy, and I can't find anything, just imagine all the interest of the others and all the demand that's going to be going for having some sort of resource of information about this guy. So I told my wife, I said, give me an hour or two. I'm going to go in the other room and build out a website. So at that point, it was when I was dabbling in SEO just on the side. I just did it for my own hobby sites, and we'll talk about those later. But what I did is I cataloged all this information that I could find about this gentleman. I put his bio, pictures, things like that. And then I optimized it. Within just a couple days, I was outranking a billion-dollar brand, ABC, for their own website, The Bachelor. And so then what I did is I threw AdSense on there, monetized it. And so I had this source of passive income of several thousands of dollars for that season. So ABC caught on, and so did other people, because the next year I did it again and it still worked, but it was a lot harder. And then they started buying the domains and the names and pushing out content like the second it went live. And so it was a fun run while it lasted. But if anything, the business side of the story is, as funny as it was to build a website about something I'm not personally passionate about, it solved a problem. And what that problem was there was consumer demand for information about this guy. And so that's kind of the sweet spot in a lot of these opportunities as an entrepreneur is, what are the things that you can do and have fun with that solve a problem or a pain point that other people are asking to have solved?
So, could you, in just briefly, so the way you outranked a billion-dollar company is, so you built a website, and can you just just briefly in layman's terms tell people what
Mm-hmm.
you did? I mean, I know the game's kind of changed now and it's harder, as you said, but just to help us understand who, because I don't understand the stuff like you do.
Yeah. So the easiest way to understand how to show up higher on search engines is to make Google look good. And what I mean by that is, who has a website that solves the customer's problem? Somebody goes to Google, types in something, who can Google direct them to that solves that problem or answers that question? And so the problem in this circumstance was people wanted to know more information about this guy and they wanted to see pictures about this guy. And so I went through and I found any publicly available information, and it was just like a sentence or two here on this other site, a sentence or two. It was like just completely scattered. There was nothing dedicated just to this guy. So I became the platform that had the information that was dedicated and organized about this guy. Now, there's other stuff we can get into in how you structure the website technically, but really what made that website tick was just solving that problem of having an organized resource of information and pictures.
Okay. So and then you said you built the website a minute ago, but then you also said you did something to monetize it. What specifically did you
Mm-hmm.
do to?
So I use a platform called AdSense, and so it's there's two sides to AdSense, right? So a lot of the listeners, a lot of business owners are familiar with AdWords. Now it's just called Google Ads. So you go there and say, I want my ad to show up in these search queries and or websites. And so the people that opt into the websites, then I'm the other side of that equation. I'm the website. And so these ads get displayed based on content relevance. So I placed the code of the ads. And then as Google sends visitors to the website, it says, hey, what types of things are this person interested in? And then dynamically displays ads related to whatever Google deems is relevant. And then based on the amount of clicks that gets, the website owner gets a percentage of that ad revenue.
Oh, okay. And okay, so to help me, okay, well, actually, I don't want to dwell on that because there's a lot of things I want to cover. Can you give the most basic explanation of SEO for people who may not understand? I didn't even know what SEO was
Yeah.
until like 18 months ago.
Yeah. So it stands for search engine optimization. The easy answer, and then I'll give a medium answer, and we'll kind of skip the hard answer. So the easy answer is, how do you show up on search engines for words that you can monetize without paying for ads? So it's about building up the credibility of the website so search engines trust it more and show you over the competition. The medium answer is there's kind of three pillars to SEO. One is website structure. Is it mobile friendly? Does it load quickly? Does it have a good user experience? Two is content. Do you properly communicate what your product or service is and why it solves the pain points or answers the questions of whatever industry you're in? And three is external credibility. Do other people talk about your brand or link to your website? So anytime there's that external reference to you, it counts as a vote in the search engine popularity contest. So that's really the three pillars. I mean, that can go down 100 different tangents, but you can categorize all of those into those three buckets.
Okay, and what are like maybe three? What are like? I don't know if there's two things or three things or four things, but what are just a few of the most important things when it comes to maximizing your SEO, whether it's a blog or site or article or whatever?
Given the audience that we're trying to keep things simplistic, it would be down the path of content. Yeah. I mean, there's so out of those three buckets, what a lot of people are surprised to learn is the majority of your exposure on search engines comes from the latter two. So the first one was, how good is your website? The latter two were content and external credibility. So a lot of people are surprised that it's the latter two that drive most of the visibility, but those will only be effective if you have the solid structure done. So it's kind of like building a house, right? You build a foundation. Once it's done, you don't care about it, you don't look at it, you don't think about it, but it's supporting everything. You do it once, and then everything after that, you can change your paint, you can change the carpet. It's the same thing. So in SEO, you build your foundation, you make sure your website loads quickly, is mobile friendly, has good call to action. Once that's done, the way you increase your visibility is more in the other stuff. You can't show up on search engines for anything other than what they can read. So you have to figure out how to clearly communicate what your product or service is in written words. And then you can go down other things of content repurposing. You can get into different things like images and videos, but it all starts with the written word, because you can only show up for what search engines can read. And then you can take that content and then you can push it externally too. And there's all sorts of other things as well. But that's kind of the crash course.
Am I right that SEO is? I think I was reading somewhere that SEO, because I did a little homework before interviewing you, because I don't know SEO like you do, just the very basics. As I
Mm-hmm.
understand it, SEO has changed over the years, right? Because I think in the past you could load a document with keywords and it would rank higher on Google, but now the game's changed and it's much harder. Is that right?
Yes and no. So the algorithms change a lot. There's micro changes daily. Significant algorithm updates are maybe a couple times a year. But those three pillars we touched on, those have not changed.
Oh,
So as things evolve, like a good example is, I have a lot of people say, well, Damon, what about voice? Voice search is increasing. So what do I do to have my website be the one that Google references if somebody does a voice search? So what drives that is still the same three things. When somebody does a voice search and says, hey Google, tell me XYZ, what it's doing is it's trying to find the website that it can access the quickest. So we talked about that. And then it's trying to find the website that has the right answer. We talked about content. So the way that those results, our output has changed, but the way that it accesses which website it's going to deem the winner has not really changed.
mm. Okay, got you. And so in regards to those two latter points, and that's why it's important to update your website with fresh content.
Yeah, you want You want your consistent content. I mean, your homepage, your about us, your contact us, those things you kind of keep locked in. But then, yeah, you got to have some sort of ongoing source of education to educate your audience and search engines why you're the expert in your industry.
What do you recommend? Once a week or twice a month? I guess there's probably not. I'm guessing there's not one hard rule, but how
Hmm.
often do you recommend people update their site with content?
Yeah, you're right. There's not a specific number. I mean, kind of the rule of thumb is quality over quantity. So it's not necessarily, it'd be better to do something every 2 weeks, twice a month, than to do something diluted and
Yeah, yeah.
worthless daily. But kind of the rule of thumb is we aim for, like for our clients, we aim for a minimum of twice a month, but it's going to depend on how competitive the industry is. So, I mean, if you're comparing something where there's a lot of competition with a lot of profit margins up for grabs, like real estate, that's hyper competitive compared to selling a random widget only in one isolated location.
Okay, okay, okay. Now I went through your profile and your site, and one of the things you talk about is building an SEO strategy. Um, how does one like? Let's say I hire you, all right, and I'm in the I currently work in the liquor and wine industry.
Hmm.
If that helps, or if you want to use a different industry that you've done, how would you I would assume that if I did hire you, there'd probably be a meeting and there'd probably be a lot of questions. But in a shorter version, for the sake of the podcast, how could you take people through how an SEO strategy develops from, okay, Damon, I want to hire you, to boom.
Yeah. Yeah. So good question. It all starts with research and data, right? Because the nice thing about data is it removes the emotions from it. You've been in your industry for a long time, and so you have biases that you're not aware of, or you look at it more from an owner manager logistics position and not a consumer position. And so what you want to do is there's really cool tools out there that tell you what your audience is already asking search engines. So instead of you coming in and going, hey, I think I should really write about this one thing about liquor because that's really cool to me, your audience might not care about that thing. So then what you do, the main goal is to align your strategy with buyer intent and not strictly an SEO strategy. We've all seen those horribly written websites and blog pages that are written just like either by some sort of bot or automation or for blatant SEO purposes to rank. But then even if those websites show up, that doesn't solve the customer's problem. And so then they don't buy the thing anyway. So your goal is to start with what is the quickest path to monetization? What are my consumers already asking? And then how can I solve that problem? So I'll give you like a funny story. In working with the Utah Jazz team store, so their team store is the retail division. So their goal is sell more hats and merchandise and jerseys. In going through this process of what you just asked about, what is the strategy? We go, okay, how do we align with buyer intent of the types of merchandise we're trying to sell? So what I mean is they were trying to sell jerseys for newer players, and then they were trying to sell jerseys for legacy players, primarily only on the legacy side, primarily only John Stockton and Karl Malone. So then, okay, what do we create? What content do we create to attract those buyers for Karl Malone? So through that discovery, and this is why I say data removes the emotions, is your default response is probably like, okay, well, let's talk about Karl Malone's career. Let's talk about what college he went to. What's his highest scoring game? How many championships did he win? Was he an MVP? All those have been written about a million times. So as we go through those tools that say, what are our consumers asking? One of the funny things we found that we would have never thought of, that the Jazz would have never thought of, but the data clearly revealed was people were asking, how did Karl Malone die? But Karl Malone's not dead.
Oh,
So then that's your opportunity. Wrong question, but you bring the right answer to the table and say, here's the top 10 myths of how Karl Malone died. Maybe something like that.
oh, so
You
that
bring
that
him
would be
in.
an article.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so the nice thing about that is you answer the question that the consumers are already asking, but then also you show up way faster on search engines because nobody else is writing about it because Karl Malone's not dead.
okay, okay, oh, okay, okay. So using a wine and spirits example, if I want to do a YouTube video or an article on champagne, then I would do a search in YouTube or Uber Suggest or one of these as I don't know what Uber suggests is called. I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know what you a keyword search engine or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair to say.
and then so if I type in champagne and then I see the most popular hit is the history of champagne, then I would want to write an article or do a video on the history of champagne. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give the audience a really cool tool. It's called answerthepublic.com. So it's free. That's where we found the caramel thing. And as you were talking, I went and typed in champagne, and here's some of the things that show up. It brings up the who, what, when, where, and why of champagne. So on here, I'll just cherry pick a couple of random examples. It says, why champagne saucers? I have no idea what that means, but you probably know what that means.
Why champagne
Or
saucers?
yeah. So
No.
there's enough demand out there of people searching that it justifies writing a piece about it. There's another one that says, why is champagne expensive? So then you do a piece of content about the varying degrees of champagne. And then there's other things like this, like who owns Champagne Sports Resort? I'm not familiar with Champagne Sports Resort, but clearly there's enough demand out there to answer that question. So there's all sorts of things, like who invented champagnes, who's champagne problems, like there's all sorts of things. Can champagne freeze? Like there's some fun stuff, there's some bizarre stuff. But even in those few examples, I'm assuming that some of those you would have never thought of.
So you use Answer the Public? That's the one you use?
That's one of them. We use a lot of tools and then we'll layer the results together. Yeah.
Okay. Well, on a quick note on champagne, did you know when a cork flies off, it can go up to 25 miles an hour?
I would believe it. Yeah.
And actually, Dom Perignon did not invent champagne. It was an English scientist was experimenting with it. I think 60 years before Dom Perignon. I actually have a
Mm,
video on my company's YouTube channel about champagne, so I had to
mm,
research it. But okay, so in the when it's broken down in the most basic form, for anybody watching, if they want to create a piece of content and with the goal of to get traction and monetization, they should go to a keyword search engine like Uber Suggest or Answer the Public or whatever. Type in
mhm.
your topic, see what is getting the most hits, and if you do a piece on that, then you'll have better chances than something that isn't getting the hits. Is that in broken down the most basic? Am I getting it?
Yes and no. So yes, do that. The no is don't focus on the ones that have the most hits. Focus on the ones that have the most relevance. So why would you want to attract the one with the highest volume if it's not relevant? So I'd rather have 1 in 10 people convert than 1 in 1,000. So
Yeah.
equally focus on relevance.
Well, how do you know which one's most relevant? Does it say in the Answer the Public or somewhere? Or?
No, relevant to your product or service.
Okay. Got you. Okay. Oh, okay. So for example, if I let's say well,
If
distillery.
you don't sell Dom Perignon, but Dom Perignon keeps showing up, don't write about Dom Perignon.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, got you. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it would make sense. It has to be relevant to your industry. Okay. Um, the Now in a second here, I want to get into you starting your own business, but I know you're active on LinkedIn. Can you tell
Mhm.
us, tell me what is, how much of a part has LinkedIn played in you growing your business and getting more leads and customers?
Substantially, but only in the last 2 years. So I didn't use it prior to 2 years ago. I've had a
I
LinkedIn
didn't
account
either.
forever. Yeah, I mean, I probably had it. So I've owned the agency for 15 years. I probably had LinkedIn before that, and it was just an old dusty resume,
Yep, that's what I
completely
did too.
inactive, right? Yeah. So what happened was about 2 years, well, a little over 2 years now, because it was. I remember it was November, so this would have been like November, probably 18 or 19, so about 2 years, a couple months. So what had happened is it actually started over on the Facebook side of things. So I didn't use LinkedIn at all, and then I only use Facebook. I didn't use any other platform, and I still don't. But I used to have a hard line on Facebook. It was like, okay, this is friends and family only, no business. So if clients would add me, I would just ignore it. um, and then what happened was I just it wasn't productive, right? Nothing specific happened, but I just thought, why am I spending so much time on Facebook? I'm not contributing there. I'm not getting anything out of it. Why do I go and just scroll? So we all know that if you delete Facebook, it doesn't really delete it. So I wanted to take it a step further, and my wife was awesome. And I said, hey, I want to delete everything. And so I logged into my account on her laptop, and she spent like 3 weeks going through and manually deleting every post I'd ever made, manually deleting every comment I'd ever done on anybody else's profile,
Wow.
manually deleting every message in my private message, manually unfriending every person I'd ever connected with. Then I deleted it.
Wow.
So then what happened after that was a couple of weeks went by, and then I had maybe that one client that was a friend first. And so they got through and were on LinkedIn, and I needed a message to them, but now I couldn't. And then there was that second client that had that same thing. So then I started thinking, well, why can't I engage with people, and why can't I do social media my way? And I didn't know what my way was, but I was willing to figure it out. And so then I turned it back on, started adding, friends, and this time I intentionally started adding business contacts. And then I said, okay, why don't we kind of experiment with this? And the things I want to balance are, I want to use this more as a networking platform. I like to talk about business. I like to talk about marketing. I like to talk about management, but I also like to talk about my appreciation for my wife and kids. But I also am hyper private about them. So it's like this weird contradiction of I want to share all the warm and fuzzies about my family, but I don't want to identify my kids' names. I don't want to identify their faces, things like that. I want to protect their privacy. So how do I do that? How do I be very personal? How do I show that I'm a father and a husband while protecting those things? And so it took a couple of weeks to kind of figure out what that dance was. And when I kind of found that rhythm, then I thought, well, why don't I also try this on LinkedIn? Because it's a business platform, and I talk a lot about business. And so as I continued to figure out what my voice was, balancing business and personal while not trying to completely exclude one side or the other, then I started to hit a rhythm. So it took probably 3 months before I started to understand kind of what the approach was. And then 6 months where I felt confident in it. And then by the 9-month mark is when I went through and quantified things. So I said, I know I've got some leads out of this. I know I've got some sales out of this, but how much? And I've only quantified it that one time since then, because in that 9 months, it added $150,000 in annual recurring revenue just from LinkedIn.
Wow.
So since then, it's gone up exponentially more. And so I know that it's worth the investment in time. And so I haven't gone and quantified it more. But prior to that, before we hit record, I said we could maybe talk about how we don't do any lead gen, at least intentional. We've never spent $1 on advertising. So before this, we were entirely referral driven. We still have probably 50% of our revenue come from referrals, but the other 50% now is from LinkedIn. Referrals haven't slowed down. It's just that LinkedIn has caught up.
So your LinkedIn approach to gaining, I know you said about 50% comes from referrals. Are you doing any like cold messaging or anything, or you're just posting content of value on LinkedIn and then people are coming to you? Is that what's happening?
Exactly. Yeah. I take the opposite approach of what a lot of people recommend. That's not to say the other approach of sending messages doesn't work. It's just not my style. Like, I'm not salesy. I don't like to go vomit sales pitches on everybody. And so when I engage with other people, so I'll go add other people, but I don't pitch them. My goal in adding people is to expose them to my content. So I have VAs that go out there, and we strategically identify types of industries and people to add. And then we'll add them. And I only have 2 messages I send. The first message is just this bio that says, hey, what's happening, Damon? Not looking to pitch anything. So I proactively diffuse kind of that wall that we all have when we get a message. And I say, I'm not here to pitch anything. Here's my background. And then I'll let you go. I clearly tell them I'm going to let them go, to set that expectations that I'm not going to chase them down. And then what I do is I start with something personal. I say, I'm Damon, been married 15 years, father of 3. I don't start with the business stuff. I try and break that ice a little bit. And then I give them like one sentence, and it says, I founded SEO National 15 years ago. I've been cool to work with X, Y, and Z big businesses, blah, blah, blah. I literally say blah, blah, blah. So then we get that extra part where it's like, oh, okay, this is not a bot, right? And then after that, I say, I can't remember what the last sentence is, something like that, like, your turn or whatever. And then that's it. That's it. If they don't reply, I don't care.
And you do that in the first message when you connect?
Yeah. So let me take a step back, because I did say there's 2. So the first one says, is just that first part where it says, hey, not looking to pitch, glad to connect. It's something like that, right? Just one sentence. And then once they accept, then it says, then I'll follow up and say the other thing, like, hey, thanks, appreciate the connection or appreciate the reply, married, here's my career, things like that, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm out. I don't send a single thing after that unless they reply. If they reply and keep the conversation going, then I'll keep the conversation going. But even throughout the conversation, I still don't pitch. I just let it go wherever they let it go, because I don't want to sell them in the messages. I want them to be exposed to my content, my expertise, and that's going to sell them on their own. So then what happens is later that, they get exposed to my content, a couple weeks, couple months go by, they approach me and they send me a message. And what's interesting is where they convert. They build a subconscious relationship with me and build that trust based on me continuing to showcase my expertise, but they convert on something personal. So what I mean is they'll usually message and it's damn near almost always something like this. Hey, Damon, I know you do SEO, super cool. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that was really cool what you said about your wife. That's what converts them.
Well, because it's, what it is, it's human, because people want to connect with people. And yeah, I mean, that's because people want to connect with people they like. So obviously that resonated with that person you're referring to, and it shows that human side. That's actually kind of why I reposition myself, because I was a chef for 27 years, and this is me. Long story short, I rejoined. Well, I've been on LinkedIn since 2007, but right before the pandemic, I started going back on. Then the pandemic hit, and I realized, I still have a job, but the pandemic taught me that everything could go away like that. And my salary was cut because we were a lot slower. And I thought to myself, you can't be blamed if something happens to you out of your control. But as an adult, you owe it to yourself to protect yourself for those random things that can happen. So then that's when it just kind of, nobody told me this. I just kind of discovered it after kind of seeing what people were doing on LinkedIn. I thought, I need to brand myself. I need to learn how to brand myself. I need to know how this whole social media thing works. I need to learn how to market myself, because prior to the pandemic, I didn't understand content marketing, social media, SEO, branding, lead magnet, landing page, none of that. But over the past 2 years, I've taken a few courses. I've spent about 2-3 hours a day on LinkedIn. So I've kind of put myself through school, so to speak. So about 2 months ago, I repositioned myself as a LinkedIn coach, and I help people get started who are newer, because it's, when you're learning how to do it, you probably remember, it's like drinking water from a fire hose. And but my ultimate, once I finally niche down completely, because I'm not fully where I want to be as far as my niching down. Ultimately, my goal is to help people create a life of financial freedom through side hustles or growing themselves more revenue on LinkedIn. So yeah, and then LinkedIn's a vehicle. So that's my ultimate.
Yeah, you'd mentioned branding. There's a good book, and it's free. The guy's name's Dan Fleischman. It's called How to Set Up Your Personal Brand for Under $1,000, and it's all those things that you talk about, right? And it's like basically what it says is, whether you know it or admit it or not, you have a personal brand. So are you going to control it or not? We all have a personal brand, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, whether you're a business owner or not, whether you stay at home, whatever it is, there is a reputation and a presence about you and how you position yourself online. So are you going to be intentional about it or not?
Yeah, and that's what I decided to do. I created a website. It's very basic. I did it myself. It's WordPress. But I mean, your brand is bigger than any job, any title, any pay, and your brand, not your job, is what's going to get you opportunities. And you already know this. I'm telling you stuff you already know. But anyways, those are just some of the realizations that I came to. And, like the advice somebody gave me is like, Kurt, even if you have a job where you're really well paid, you're happy, start an email list. Get an email list going, create content for your email list, and just keep growing.
The nice thing, if there's any nice thing out of the pandemic, it's for me, it's two things, right? One is like what you kind of brought up, is it opened up opportunities, or at least, I mean, the opportunities were already there. It just open up a different view or light for other people to see it. And so with all the misfortune of people losing their jobs, it's also interesting that then that now paints the picture that there is no safe play, right? So do you want a 9 to 5 day job? That's fine. Do you want to be an entrepreneur? That's fine. But either way, you have some sort of risk, right? And so why not pursue whichever one makes you more happy? And then kind of the second thing out of this is I'm really interested to see how we look back at this time, because there's obviously all the downsides to things, but I think there's going to be a huge positive trajectory yet to be determined from everyone being pushed to make a decision in such uncomfortable circumstances. So it's kind of like you had touched on as well, is, it may not be your fault for whatever happened, losing your job and things like that. It may not be your fault for the circumstances you were born into, but you being stuck there is your fault,
Yeah.
right?
You are, everything that happens to you in your life is because of you. That's my belief. I mean, okay, maybe not if your house gets destroyed in a tornado. I mean, that's different, but
How you recover and move on, yeah, it's your call.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you owe it to yourself. Because but anyway, so in like my business that I run, I was so busy with the day-to-day stuff that I like, so when you get so busy, you sometimes can't see the forest through the trees. So when the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic hit, it obviously slowed things down, and then it gave me time to kind of breathe, so to speak, because I was working a lot and pre-pandemic. And then I just started learning, like, because of LinkedIn. LinkedIn's like a mini university. I realized that, wow, I don't know how to cold call or cold email as well as I thought I did. Actually, I sucked at it. I don't know what content is or social media. I don't know what marketing is. So I've been reading. I just finished this. I'm going to read it again.
Yeah.
Um, and so in that regard, the pandemic was good for me because it gave me time to like take stock and realize that not only what I needed to improve my personal life, but for my business, the business that I run. And
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for that, I don't know that I would have seen those things because I was so busy
Mm-hmm.
just, with the day-to-day stuff. So anyways,
Yeah.
so let's go into, so you started a business, and my podcast is dedicated to people who want to start a business or don't know how, or maybe are too afraid or what have you. Can you just tell people, like, here you are at one point, you didn't have a business, and just walk people through, just basically what you did to start a business from scratch?
Yeah. So I had it. I started on the side a little bit too, but it was fairly passive, right? So we had the story about The Bachelor. The site that I started before that, probably where, I mean, we could go all the way back to when I was a kid, and part of those blips on the radar. So I grew up lower middle class, and I didn't have like a computer, and I knew I never would. And so I would take advantage of the computers at school, even simple things like typing class. I love typing class because I knew I couldn't do it at home. And so I was like this kid that was probably, I don't know, 12, and he's typing 50, 60 words a minute. And so then I took that into junior high, and because I could type well, then I got the opportunity to do whatever this first kind of new class was on. I mean, it sounds silly now to listeners, but like, how to learn Word and things like that, because these were all new. And so I learned word processing. And then from there, I was able to take a class where me and like 4 other kids in this little exclusive class got to make the school lunchroom menus. And we started to learn really basic things about graphics within Word. So from there, when I got into high school, I took an HTML class, and that was the first year they had HTML classes, because this was before WordPress and Dreamweaver and all these apps and builders. So I learned it by hand. And then when I went into college is probably where it really started. Is I had a communications class where the teacher said, all right, by the end of the semester, we have to build a website, HTML, build it by hand, has to have these minimum requirements. And I got thinking about how much time I was going to spend building out this website, knowing it would just be wiped off the school server at the end of the semester. So I asked him, I said, can I buy a domain and build it on a domain and keep it? And he said, yeah, as long as we can access it and, critique it, I don't care where it is. So I built a website called eliterides.com. I still own the domain. There's nothing there, though. I've archived everything. And it was a car enthusiast website. What happened is I started to build up a big following locally. I started to get thousands of people. I'm in Utah, and I started to get thousands of people in Salt Lake area that would actively engage in the forums and the message boards and upload pictures and things like that. So that's when I said, how do I make this better? That's when I leaned more intentionally into design. As it grew, that's then also when I said, how do I monetize this? So that's how I learned about AdSense and started learning about marketing. So then I did it on the side without any clear intention of knowing it would turn into a career or anything. So I'd help friends build websites. And then I finally took a job doing web design. And through that, I was exposed to affiliate marketing. I never got into affiliate marketing, but I just saw all the potential that was there. So then at one point, that company got shut down. And at that moment, I had a choice to say, okay, do I go find another day job, or do I leverage the things that I built up on the side? And until that moment, I never really thought about it. And the way that I made the decision was simple math. At the time, I was making probably $28,000 a year on my day job. I was 23 years old, 24 years old, something like that. On the side, I was making probably $22,000 a year. So it was almost 50-50. But I was spending 80% of my time on the day job. Well, now I have to choose if I want to go replace that day job. And what I did is I did the math. At the time, it was just me and my wife. All we had was a mortgage and a car payment. That was it. So if I were to lean into my side hustle, and at the time she was still working, could we still pay our bills? And we could still pay our bills. So to me, that seemed like as good of a calculated risk as I was ever going to take. And so I never went and got a job again. And then what had happened is I lost my 60-ish% of income. But by freeing up the 80% of time, I was able to make that revenue back in about 3 months. And then from there, it's just continued to scale.
And so how did you, because I know one of the biggest challenges people have is like, okay, I have this idea for a business, and let's assume it's a good idea. But how did you like get the word out to people? Like, okay, I'm here, I'm for hire. You've got this idea, you've got this service or product you have. How did you go from this is what I want to do to now I've got customers? What did you do to start getting customers out of the blue from not having any?
I just put in the work. I mean, it sounds overly simplistic, but I would look for opportunities to engage people. And then, probably a better example is, this kind of becomes chicken before the egg kind of thing, but I think it'll still illustrate what I'm trying to get at. Is one of my first clients, who's still a client today, 15 years later. I just did a website for him, right? And it was like a friend. It was my friend worked there, and so he knew I did it on the side, and I said, I'll do it for cheap. Right. And so I was always willing to do things for the exposure and the learning curve, so I could improve what my craft was. But what happened is then you build a relationship. So a lot of people underestimate the value of free. A big chunk of our clients came from me doing something for free. And to this day, I still dedicate probably about an hour a day to helping somebody for free, getting on Zoom or running a report and saying, here's all the problems with your website. Here's how to solve them. That's how you get a head start on your own. If I can help you later, let me know. I don't sell them on it, but I establish a relationship. And so with this first client, we did the website. Then they said, tell me about this Google thing. So when I first started, it was web design. And when they asked me about Google, I said, I know enough that I can help you, but I don't know enough that I feel comfortable charging you for it because I can't guarantee the outcomes, but I also don't want to work for free. So how about we establish these benchmarks? If we hit those goals, then you owe me retroactively, and we start an ongoing retainer. So I'm incentivized to win. They don't have anything to lose. And so we ended up hitting those benchmarks. Started a retainer. That was my first SEO client. So they had then had success, and they told one of their clients, said, hey, talk to our web design guy. Here's the arrangement he did. See if he'll work it out with you. So I did the same thing with them. I said, I won't charge anything, but if it works, here's the retainer moving forward. Same thing. Killed it with them, got the retainer. And so there's there's a lot of opportunity in just establishing relationships. And like we talked earlier, up until maybe 2 years ago, the majority of our leads came from referrals. And I can probably, so I did the math the other day. I went and looked in our billing portal the other day, and we've helped over 1,000 different businesses in the last 15 years. And if I were to connect the dots on those 1,000 businesses, probably 900 of them, like, you know how like there's like a crime scene movie where you got the yarn drawn across the cork boards. I could probably connect yarn to 900 out of those 1,000 clients coming from one relationship or a previous relationship or a previous relationship. So the entire foundation of the 7-figure business has been established on helping other people.
So you started basically by reaching out to people you knew, it sounds like. Is that right? Say, hey, I can do this. I can't do it enough to where I can guarantee results, so that's why I'll do it for free. And so you reached out to people you knew first, right? Am I right? Is that
Partially, yeah.
okay?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
lean
I mean,
into
that's all you
what
can do, I guess.
opportunities.
Um,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I like that approach of what was it you said? I know I can I know I can help you, but I can't guarantee how much, so I'll do it for free. And then you said benchmarks. That's smart. I like that. Because I've been doing since I repositioned myself, I've been offering people free coaching, and because I haven't established myself yet to the community, so I know I have to earn some testimonials. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
doing coaching for free. I said, look, I'll give you a couple coaching sessions if you want. If you're happy with everything, please leave me a testimonial. I leave it at that. I don't try to press them to buy or do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I found usually, I mean, if you show somebody you can provide something of value, then they're going to come back, unless for some reason
Mm-hmm.
they can't. Maybe they don't have the money, or maybe they've taken on another job and they're too busy. Who knows? Um,
Yeah.
Okay, before I let you go, let me just ask you, how did you come to be? You're a Forbes contributor, so congrats on that. How did that come about? Was it maybe one of your clients works with Forbes or dealt with them, and they said, "Hey, you got to get Damon." How did that come about?
So it just started with publishing on other smaller websites, and you just kind of leverage that credibility
Oh,
to from the small websites to the medium websites, the medium websites to the large websites. The common thread in all this discussion is just start small without having without necessarily having expectations, right? So give without expecting in return
yeah,
is kind of the common thread.
yeah. Okay, so here's the last question. This is totally random. So you're busy and you need to unwind. What what is maybe you're gonna plop in front of Netflix or whatever. And I'm asking, having been a chef, and I work in the
Hmm.
spirits industry, what is your go-to libation and you know your food? Like for me, I want a nice steak and cheese sandwich,
Hmm.
and maybe I don't like liquor with sandwiches, but if I were, it would be a
Hmm.
whiskey. So what is your go-to? You're like
So
maybe your comfort food, if you want to call it that.
I'm the worst person to ask because I got an autoimmune condition a couple years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So with it went drinking and the majority of food. So I eat about 3 things the same day every damn day.
Uh-huh. Okay, so let me rephrase it. What is your favorite bottled water when you want to plop down?
You know what I've been drinking is this. I got this aloe vera drink because I can't just drink water. Like I know it sounds so stupid, but I can't just drink it just bland
You're
water.
not the first
But
person
I
to actually
also
say
I
that.
also want to avoid sugars, right? And so I finally found an aloe vera drink. You know, aloe vera has all these health benefits, blah blah blah. But usually the manufacturers that sell it just load it up with sugar. And I finally found one that tastes amazing. It has no sugar, and their secret sauce is what was it? Grape flavoring. So then it doesn't taste like crap.
Try, I tried one. It was a little bit too bland, but it was also very healthy. It's called Waterloo, and it's a
Mm,
sparkling. You can get watermelon or whatever, and it does taste a little bit bland because they don't put a bunch of crap in it, which is the idea. But
yeah,
you may like it. It's called Waterloo, and they come in cans as well. I tried the
yeah.
strawberry. It was pretty good. Um, oh, and before you hang up, please, with Riverside, it needs to buffer for like a minute or two. So I'm
Yeah,
going
I'm
to
familiar.
what I'll do is I'll close out the segment, then I'll stop record, and then just wait before you get off. So
Yep.
so Damon, hey, look, man. Oh, before I do that though, is there anything I didn't cover that you want to cover? Is there any self promotion you want to do?
If you want to learn more, you're welcome to hit me up. If I can answer anything, hit me up on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about SEO, I wrote a book. You can access it at freeseobook.com. It's written for the benefit of either whether you're new to marketing or advanced. It starts with some of these stories we talked about with The Bachelor and a couple other sites I did. And so it lays the foundation of the potential that you can get through this process through some fun non-technical stories, and then eases into a slow technical explanation. So you can grab a copy there, and that'll kind of break some of this stuff down for you.
And you have a book on Amazon. I just bought that.
Yeah, same book. Yeah, so if you want the physical copy, it's on Amazon. If you want the audio copy, it's on Audible. If you want just the PDF copy, you can get it on the website.
Oh shit, I could have got it for free. That's right. More revenue for you.
I get like $1. So
well, look, Damon, I appreciate it, man. I knew I was going to learn a lot from you, and I did. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for your contribution, and hey, I'll see you on LinkedIn, and I'll let you know when I post this. It'll be a couple weeks. I've been amassing. I've got about 10 episodes recorded now, or 12. So I'm getting them edited, and I just released my first one actually last week by a lady who was a hairstylist for years and started her own rum company. So
cool.
Well, hey, thank you, man.
Yeah, you bet. Good chatting. Okay. Thanks, Kurt.
You too.